Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll allow you a few more minutes here to get logged in before we get started on our presentation to Churchill. Hi, everyone. Again, welcome. We'll just allow you a couple more minutes here to people to join us, and we will start our presentation. Hi, everyone, and welcome. All right, let's get our presentation started here. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I am Cindy Erickson, a tour coordinator with Westworld Tours, and I will be facilitating the presentation this evening. Joining me to tell you all about the great sights and attractions you're going to see when you're in Churchill is our resident Churchill tour director, Koral Romanchuk. I always want to catch myself. She went and got married on us, changed her last name, but she's going to be forever in my mind, Koral Carpenter. And it is now Koral Romanchuk. Thank you, Koral.
Thank you, Cindy. It's my pleasure to be here with you, and I will always answer to Koral Carpenter too. That's all right.
I've got to get used to saying Koral Romanchuk. I'm sorry, Koral. And my apologies to John, your husband. Before I turn the presentation over to Koral, I just want to go over a few things with you. Number one is all about questions, and we encourage as many questions as possible. We look forward to them. So please type them into the Q&A box located on your screen there, and we will get to your questions at the end of our presentation. We look forward to them. Like I said, Koral lives in Churchill. She's very familiar with Churchill and is happy to answer any questions that you might have. Here's a little preview of our next week's presentation, another exciting tour that we are going to be doing. It's our African adventure with Koral, and you can join us to explore this bucket list adventure through South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Botswana. You're going to head into the countryside, the ecological adventures, including safaris, game drives, bushwalks, and river cruise safaris. It's a balance of urban and rural experiences. And I know Koral is excited to share her experiences on our last African adventure that she guided our guests through. So you're going to want to tune in for that one. And that's going to be 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. That will be Wednesday, March 27th. No, sorry, March 20th. My apologies. March 20th. Koral is not going to be with us March 27th. She will be with us March 20th. And again, here we go, March 20th, 7 p.m. is our Africa presentation. You can register for that on our website. You can go to westworldtours.com, and there is a tour presentation there. You'll be able to sign up for our presentation. And if you'd like to receive emails and notifications about future presentations or any of our new tours that we are announcing or launching, please sign up for our e-newsletter. You can unsubscribe at any time. We will not inundate you with emails. In order to do that, you can easily go to our website, westworldtours.com/subscribe, and enter a couple of tidbits of information, and you will start receiving our e-newsletter. So for those that are not familiar with Westworld Tours, I'll just take a quick second here to tell you a little bit more about us. We are Western Canada's premier tour company, and we've been serving Canadians from coast to coast with escorted travel throughout North America and around the world since 2000. We're presenting quality components, including modern, comfortable coaches, professional, pleasant tour directors like Koral herself, experienced, courteous drivers, baggage handling, excellent accommodations. We're going to take in all the important sites and attractions and include several meals throughout. We've had thousands of passengers that have joined us and chosen our first class style of touring, enjoying the great value, security, and stress-free environment, all while making new friends along the way. We know our tour directors enjoy getting to know you while you're on tour, and they love to see familiar faces when you join us once again. So here is our Churchill Explorer. Tour is going to depart August 13th to 19th, 2024. Churchill, Manitoba is one of the most alluring destinations in North America, known for its spectacular scenery, wondrous wildlife, seductive spirit, a one-of-a-kind northern town like no other. Lying on the edge of the Arctic, venture out in a rover over the tundra, learning about the unique landscapes of the area, and making sure to always be on the lookout for wildlife, such as caribou, eagles, and if you're lucky, a polar bear. Not to mention the belugas. I mean, Churchill is known as the polar bear and beluga whale capital of the world during the summer. You'll see the belugas by the hundreds in Churchill River Estuary on a whale watching tour, followed by a tour of Fort Prince of Wales. You'll enjoy a lovely town and area tour, visit Cape Mary National Historic Site, and the list really does go on and on and on. So I'm going to stop chatting and let Koral tell you more. So it is with my pleasure to introduce Koral Romanchuk, our senior tour director, as I said, who is a resident of Churchill, Manitoba. And we are so happy that you've joined us this evening, Koral, to tell us all about your lovely home.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I just get excited just listening to you talk, and you're right. It really is my pleasure to be here with you tonight, everyone. And it's kind of fun looking at the pictures you've had up on the screen already, and thinking that is literally right outside my door right now, because I am here at home in Churchill, Manitoba this evening. I am born and raised in Saskatchewan, and I will always be a proud prairie girl as well. But I came to Churchill a long, long time ago. And if you're wondering how a girl from Saskatchewan ends up living in a little remote northern town like Churchill, I came here with my parents back at the beginning of the 90s. I was raised in the tour industry. This was a very popular tour destination for us, starting from 1991 and onwards. I remember way back in those days as a teenager thinking I didn't know what the allure was of Churchill, only that it seemed like a lot of people were really interested in coming here. I can honestly tell you all, from my very first day in Churchill, I was completely enamored by this place, and I never looked back after that time. I've had the pleasure of working for Westworld since 2001, but also since 1999, I've worked as a local guide here in Churchill as well. So last October, I celebrated 25 years working as a local guide with various tour companies here in Churchill. And then, yes, it's true. 5 years ago, last October, I married my husband, John, who is a born and raised Churchillian. He is actually from here. So that's how I came to be in Churchill. And that's why it makes it a very special privilege for me to actually have the opportunity to talk about this really unique destination and show you this beautiful town as well. And it really is a gem in northern Manitoba. In fact, it's quite incredible what all we have here. It's true that we are famous for being the polar bear capital of the world in the fall, when the polar bears are quite literally migrating right through Churchill. Later on in the presentation, I'll talk a bit about some of the murals around town. But the picture you're seeing next to the tour highlights here is definitely for many of us, both as locals and as visitors too, one of the favorites of the murals. But it really is just an incredible destination here. And as Cindy was saying, there is certainly a chance in the summertime, particularly in the month of August, of being lucky enough to see a polar bear during your stay. As local guides, I can certainly assure you we're always on the lookout for them. And it's really true. The beluga whale watching is absolutely fantastic. It's amazing. So we'll get to that. But tour highlights, I'll run through it very quickly. 6 nights accommodation, a 2-night stay in Churchill, deluxe motor coach transportation, 7 meals included, via rail, coach seats with meals from Thompson to Churchill, Pichu Falls Provincial Park, the welcome reception, guided beluga whale watching tour, half-day polar rover tour, Churchill town and area tour, and cultural presentation. So that's a lot packed into just a week-long tour. This is nice, everyone. I think a lot of us enjoy looking at a map, and this is a good chance for us to kind of go over the routing of the tour and what you'll see. There's actually 3 maps in one on the screen you're looking at. Inset in the left-hand corner, you see a town map, which basically shows you kind of a grid of what the town looks like today. Some of you are probably very aware that at one time there was a very, very large military base called Fort Churchill, actually, just a couple of miles out of town. But then when the military were leaving Churchill back in the 1970s, the town was really changing. And much of the town as it looks today, the grid, the layout, much of the housing, our beautiful Churchill Town Center complex, the multi-purpose facility, all those things were built and happened back in the 1970s. So that's a grid of the town as it looks. And then if we go over to the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the red line, the coach tour route, going up from Regina through Saskatoon, overnighting in the Paw, getting on the Via Rail train in Thompson. And then it's roughly about 14 hours-ish from Thompson up to Churchill. We'll talk a little bit about the railway in the presentation, and I must say we've been doing quite well the last couple of years with the train arriving pretty much on time, which was not always the case. So the train departs from Thompson at 5 in the afternoon. You arrive in Churchill roughly about 9:30 the following morning. So that just shows you the route. And then if we look at the top of the screen, kind of over more to the left-hand side, I like this as well because this shows you the Churchill area. Going over to the far left at the top, you can see the Churchill River estuary, the two sides of the Churchill River where the land kind of, it's almost like the mandibles of a lobster, how one kind of overreaches the other. So looking across to the West Peninsula, as we call it, where the fort is, and then on the east side where the town site is, Cape Mary National Historic Site. We'll be visiting that. The Etsenatack Museum in town, we'll talk about that. And then a short distance outside of town, attractions like the Polar Bear Holding Facility and lots more things you'll see. And then roughly about 20 kilometers away from the town site, what we call the wildlife management area. And that's where the Polar Rover will take us for a ride across the taiga, which means the land of little sticks, the transitional area between tundra and boreal forest. So we'll have a chance to view the land. And as Cindy was saying, watch for wildlife out there as well. And there's always a possibility of seeing wildlife anywhere at any time. That's definitely one thing about Churchill. You never know when a red fox is going to run right through town past our house. Sometimes the Arctic hare as well too. And of course, it's a very big deal in Churchill, literally just trying to keep polar bears out of the town. And I've often said to visitors in Churchill that it seems like in the summertime we let our guard guards down here a little bit. And while it's true, the polar bears are migrating in October and November. It's true for me that my most interesting polar bear occurrences that I've had personally have mostly happened in the summertime. And I think that's because we do let our guards down. So there is a chance, most definitely, of seeing polar bears in the summer, and particularly more so actually in August as opposed to July, as the bears are becoming more active as we start heading towards fall. This screen here that Cindy has up for us, I'll just try and go through this quickly. Churchill, I'm afraid, is a place that I could talk about for hours, so I'm going to be really careful I don't do that tonight. But starting in the left-hand top corner of the screen, beautiful Peachou Falls in northern Manitoba. It's really not that far out of Thompson. When you stop at Peachou Falls, you're easily less than a 1 hour drive away, excuse me, from Thompson, Manitoba. But it's a really beautiful waterfall. Actually, I'll go across the top right-hand screen as well too. That slide is a huge mural. I don't even know off the top of my head how many feet tall it is, but that's a big apartment building. And Thompson is known for its wolves. In fact, has been campaigning to earn the title of wolf capital of the world. But that mural rather is particularly beautiful. But you will see a lot of statuary of wolves around the city as well. And yeah, it's a really beautiful area. And of course, the two lower screens, you're looking at Via Rail. On the bottom right-hand side, that's the Skyview car. You actually have a dome car on the train, and that's pretty special that you can go view the scenery from the dome. And then of course, as I was saying, it's roughly about 14 hours. I love the train ride up to Churchill. I actually prefer it over flying in and out of Churchill. I like to think of it as forced relaxation. And as probably many of you know listening tonight, there is no road access at all into Churchill. Last summer, we had our very first cruise ship back again that we've had in several years. So occasionally people do arrive by water. We also have a modern little airport, and then we have a passenger train service 3 days a week year round, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The Via Rail comes into Churchill. And as well as that, the majority of our freight comes into Churchill by rail as well, which is good. I think sometimes visitors enjoy just going to the grocery store just for the shock value and looking at the prices of what it's like living up in Churchill. Just as one example, I could give you many, but I'll only give you one example. My box of my favorite cereal, my special K sitting on the counter right now, I think I paid about 18 or close to $19 for my cereal, and that's true. I can actually see right now the shock on Cindy's face, but yeah, that's life in Churchill. Meat, cheese, things like that. And honestly, it would be worse if everything was flown in up here. Okay, so the screen that we're looking at now. One thing you'll notice when you arrive in Churchill, a lot of murals, a lot of pretty statues around town. That's all part of just the beautification of the town. One thing you might notice that we don't have are pretty manicured lawns in front of people's homes. Very few of those. Beautiful wildflowers earlier in the summer, but not a lot of flower pots. It's very hard to do that in an area where we're sitting on top of the permafrost. So you see just a lot of things to beautify the town, and especially because tourism really is the #1 base of our economy here in Churchill. So got a fantastic polar bear statue in the top left by the Manitoba sign. That's a nice shot there, but that's just over on the edge of town. And the Via Rail station on the top right-hand corner. I know there's another slide that will be coming up of that, so we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. A really nice aerial shot in the lower left-hand corner. You can see the grain port in the background. That's a Churchill River estuary behind it. And then you can sort of see, if you look very closely, the West Peninsula reaching out into the Hudson Bay, and then the Hudson Bay just beyond it. And then the town site in the foreground. And if you can see the gray in the front of the screen, that was a lot of the Precambrian rock. You were also looking at in the previous screen there too, on the lower right right-hand corner, a typical Churchill tree. So if you saw that slide, everybody, that is very typical of what the landscape looks around here, the taiga, the land of little sticks. Tiny stunted white spruce trees that lack branches on the northwest side, partially from the prevailing winds, the north wind coming off the Hudson Bay, and also a result too of the typically dry, hard snow here. We call it crumb holes, but we also call them flag trees as well. You'll definitely, I promise you, have opportunities to take photos of those tiny little bonsai trees as well. This slide here that you're looking at now shows you some of the scenery around Churchill, but more so, this is showing you the attractions as well. I believe that picture in the top right-hand corner of the screen is just looking out from the edge of the public beach, from what I can see there, just off on the edge of town, about a 5-minute walk from where I'm sitting right now in our house. Also, on the bottom of the screen, there's actually a couple of photos of the grain port. We have so many attractions that you're going to see jam-packed into a 3-day, 2-night stay during your stay in Churchill. And I'm very pleased to tell you that we are able with Westworld to get inside of the grain port for a tour. And the reason I word it like that is because most visitors that come to Churchill never see the inside of the grain port. In fact, for most people, it's not even possible to drive onto the property of the grain port because it is a secure area. The grain port in Churchill has been going through a lot of changes in recent years. We don't have time to get into all of that, but suffice it to say there are changes going on. The Manitoba Premier Wab Canoe was just up here in late February. There were some big announcements made. There's going to be quite a substantial financial investment, which is a co-investment between Canada and then the province of Manitoba as well. So what I would anticipate are some changes coming up in the future for the grain port, but it is an important and very strategic place, being the only Arctic seaport in Canada as well. So basically, we'll see what happens, whether it's grain or more than likely, I would guess probably other products in the future that are going to be shipped going forward. But they've spent the last 2 years doing a lot of repairs on the railroad track, and it's been good for the community and certainly good for people coming up the rail as well. So lots more to talk about during your stay at the grain port, but I am happy to tell you that you will see it from the inside. In the center of the screen, that's one of the attractions that we will visit on our town and area tour. And I'll try and be very brief. I could tell you the whole story, but I won't for the sake of time. The old downed airplane that you see there is called Miss Piggy. It's an incredible story, maybe even a miraculous story, what happened to Miss Piggy and how there were no fatalities on board. But it's a cargo plane, a C-46, sitting out in the Precambrian rock, just a few minutes drive outside of Churchill. And it sat there for a long time, since November of 1979. And for many years, it's been a tour attraction in Churchill. But as you can well imagine, it has quite a story behind it. And then finally, in the top left-hand corner of the screen, you're looking at the mural on the famous polar bear holding facility. Now, this is something we cannot take you inside of. We're not allowed in tourism or as guides in Churchill to take visitors inside the polar bear holding facility. And there is a very important reason for that, and that is the natural resources staff don't want us contributing all our human scent to the buildings. Usually the building is not used in the summertime. It's usually used during the busiest weeks of the year when we have polar bears roaming basically everywhere here. And that's October and November. But as I say, there are bears around sometimes in the summer, but usually not enough that it's necessary to use the polar bear holding facility then. People often ask why we would have a polar bear holding facility. The short answer, problem bears. Where it is possible for a problem bear to be shot and killed, it's very, very rare that that happens now. And our natural resources officers here in Churchill, our program called the Polar Bear Alert Program, and then the Polar Bear Holding Facility, all of those things together and more have saved the lives of a lot of polar bears here. I'm really, really happy to say that. And so it's quite rare nowadays that a polar bear would be shot and killed in Churchill. What you're looking at here now, everyone, is another thing that we're going to be doing on our town and area tour. This is beautiful Cape Mary National Historic Site. Now, one thing you need to know about your visit to Churchill is that, well, first of all, we're in northern time up here, and it's pretty evident when you get to Churchill that everything and everyone lives at a little bit slower pace up here. It's really quite lovely. And also that we're very flexible up here. One of the reasons that we're flexible is because in the summertime, everything and really everything that hinges around tourism here is hinging on the tide times. The whale watching tours go out based on the high tides, except for adventures like kayaking and paddleboarding. They go out in the low tides. So where a program might read a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen. We do everything that's in the itinerary, but it might just be, a little bit different timing wise than what the original itinerary might read. But as for the town and area tour, honestly, we might do some of that the first day of your stay. We might do some of that the second day of your stay. We fit it all in. But Cape Mary National Historic Site is the one National Historic Site that's on the east side of Churchill that you don't need to take a boat over because you can actually drive to this site. And so we do in our tour buses. I'm sure there's some of you listening tonight who have been to Peggy's Cove on the East Coast in Nova Scotia. If you've been to Peggy's Cove, picture that scenery, and that's a lot what Cape Mary looks like, minus hundreds and hundreds of tourists crawling over the rocks and a big lighthouse. Things are very natural, very rugged, and just extremely beautiful up here in Churchill. These slides here that Cindy has for us, again, you're seeing some of that rocky coastline, the gray Precambrian rock, sometimes known as Churchill Quartzite, also known as Greywacke, is actually considered to be some of the oldest rock in the world. It's absolutely stunning. And from Cape Mary, you're looking out into the Churchill River estuary, where that river, one of the longest river systems in Canada, actually drains into the Hudson Bay. You might notice a rock cairn, a monument in the lower right-hand corner that commemorates one of the expeditions that came through here back in the 1600s. We have literally thousands of years of history here in Churchill, predating the Inuit or the Eskimo, other cultures like Dorset and Thule as well. And then from the 1600s onwards, explorers coming through here searching for the Northwest Passage. And that rock cairn commemorates the Jens Monk expedition that overwintered here in 1619, 1620. So if you are a history lover, oh my goodness, we have so much to share with you, and you're going to learn so much in Churchill. And then you might have noticed the pink wildflowers in the top of the corner too. I'm happy to tell you that even in mid-August, you should see a few just hanger-ons, some of the hangers-on. There's not going to be a lot of wildflowers left in August, but you should see a few. And luckily for us, one of the most beautiful of all of our Arctic wildflowers is one of the very last to bloom in the summertime, and that is the beautiful bright pink fireweed. And so that will usually start blooming sometime towards late July, and typically will bloom through about mid-August. And others like, if you know your wildflowers, flowers like alpine arnica, that one's usually blooming still into August, sometimes Arctic daisies as well, a beautiful flower called grass of Parnassus. Those are some of the last wildflowers to bloom every summer. So you should see a few. And then also by a mid-August visit, that means the wild berries are all coming into fruit. And we have beautiful wild berries. Berry picking by many of the locals is a very, very popular pastime up here. In the top left-hand corner of the screen, everyone, you see a nice aerial shot of Prince of Wales Fort. You will be touring Prince of Wales Fort. That also, I don't have time to get into the whole story, but I'll just try and give you a little tidbit at least. It was built over a 40-year period in the mid-1700s. And that fort was built by the Hudson Bay Company, and it is an incredible incredibly impressive structure. It's also quite a story of what happened to the fort, how it was taken over by the French in August of 1782. And it is another of the National Historic Sites that visitors tour, but only for 2 months of the year. Only in July and August are the only months of the year that you can access the fort for tours, because it is located on the West Peninsula, the other side of the Churchill River estuary. On the lower left-hand corner of the screen, where you have the pretty fireweed in the foreground, in the background, you're looking at the walls of the fort. The walls of the fort are 16 feet high and 40 feet thick. It is an impressive structure. It really is. And it's not a difficult walk. It's a very flat walk, as you can see. Just maybe a 15-minute walk where you stop periodically along the way with a Parks Canada guide who tells you stories and educates you about the fort. Once inside the fort's walls, you learn more about it, have a chance to look around on your own. And they even have a little cart there that they'll actually give you a ride if you do have mobility issues, so that nobody misses seeing the fort. In the center of the screen, you see the boat called the Sea North 2, and that's actually the boat that we take you out on the whale watching tour with. The tour that you'll be doing during your stay in Churchill is called the Beluga Fort Tour. The reason it's called that, in your 3-hour tour, part of the time you are whisked across river for a tour of the fort, and part of the time you are sitting in the river estuary, more than likely surrounded by beluga whales. And the reason I say it like that, conservative estimates say that we have around 3,000 whales here in the summer. High estimates say that, in fact, it might be more like 5,000 whales here in the summer. Very quickly, I should explain to you why on earth we would have so many beluga whales in the summer. They come for a few reasons. The feeding is very good. Their primary diet is small fish called capelin. They're also using the rocks on the river bottom to molt their skin. And maybe most importantly as well, too, it's the slightly warmer water in the river estuary that serves as a birthing sanctuary. There's a very good chance you'll see baby belugas while you're on your boat tour as well. So it's pretty special. On the lower corner of the screen, you can see a polar bear off in the distance. And ironically, I always tell visitors here in the summertime, you might see a polar bear on the rovers out in the wildlife management area, but you have just as good a chance of seeing them on the boat tour as well. Because what the polar bears are doing in the summertime is they're basically kind of lazing around. They're much more lethargic in the summer, but towards the end of summer in August, they absolutely are beginning to become more active. But they're often hanging out around the edge of the coast, just utilizing that cool breeze coming off the Hudson Bay and the Churchill River, and also using that breeze to keep the bugs or the insects off of themselves as well. And then just quickly, I know Cindy's going to turn the slide here, but just quickly on the right-hand corner of the screen, just a little look into the Attack Museum. And this is another one of the attractions that you'll be doing, more than likely on your second day in Churchill. It's probably what we'll be doing that as part of our itinerary. I've worked as a guide here for over 25 years now. I am still in love with the museum. Actually, just today, I went in there to do some shopping in their gift shop and took another probably 45 minutes for myself just to walk around and look at the collection. I never get tired of looking at the collection. And it is considered to be one of the finest examples of Inuit artwork in the world. And several stuffed mounted northern animals, beautiful little gift shop. Certainly there's plenty of shopping opportunities for you during your stay in Churchill. And I'm happy to say you can also buy lovely locally made products as well too. Handmade mittens and mucklucks and slippers, things like that, if you like. Soapstone carvings for sale in the museum gift shop. Beautiful bookstore in the museum gift shop. And then, of course, quite a number of little gift shops in town, probably at least 6 or 7, selling everything from locally made products to Manitoba made products to, the whole gamut of hoodies and T-shirts and postcards and all those types of things as well. So no end to the shopping here as well. What you're looking at in this slide here, everybody, we'll have a look there first of all in the top left-hand corner of the screen, and that is typical of the rover that you'll be going out on, and that will be typically we do that on the third of your 3 days in Churchill. We'll be doing a half-day rover tour. We have a couple of different companies, actually three really, that operate those big machines out in the wildlife management area. If you've heard of Tundra Buggy, they are the originals. And then Great White Bear Rovers, they've been in business for a little over 30 years. We might be getting on for 35 years that they've been in business. Interestingly, it is a family business, a locally owned business, which I really love. The patriarch of the company is born and raised in Churchill, and the matriarch, the first generation of the company, was born and raised just outside of the Battlefords and ended up in Churchill and owning one of the most successful tour companies that's local here to Churchill. But really lovely that there are quite a few locally owned businesses here in Churchill. So I think that's really nice and worth mentioning as well. Out of the wildlife management area, you'll have a great drive. You'll have a chance to see the land. I mentioned the word taiga, the land of little sticks, when we were looking at the tiny white spruce tree earlier. The taiga is simply a transition between boreal forest and tundra. But Churchill sits in a very unique area, which is something you'll learn more about while you're here. But we sit in a transitional area where three different ecosystems are all converging together: the tundra, the boreal forest, and also the Arctic seacoast as well. And that's why we have an interesting assortment of animals and also an incredible number of birds that migrate through the area. So anyone listening tonight who's a birder or a fan of birds, suffice it to say that we believe there's upwards of about 200 species of birds that migrate through Churchill every year. One of the most elusive, but the most sought after to see as well, is the beautiful snowy owl. And you're seeing the snowy owl there in the top right-hand corner of the screen. I'm only lucky enough to see one maybe a handful of times in the year, in a good year. So they are elusive, but they're pretty spectacular. Bald eagles, you see the bald eagles in the lower right-hand corner. That's something we see quite routinely in Churchill, and they are beautiful. We have bald eagles. We do see golden eagles from time to time here as well too. So lots of birds. Certainly, it is possible to see caribou. I don't see them all the time, but I certainly do see them out in the land, particularly in the wildlife management area and out not so much close to the town site, but out in the area that we'll be touring with the rover. So you see a caribou there on the lower left-hand side of your screen. With this transitional area with the converging ecosystems, it means that we have caribou, and it also means that we have moose in the area too. It means that we're famous for polar bears, but black bears find their way up to Churchill. And in more recent years, we've also had the occasional grizzly bear sighting as well. I have yet to see one here in Churchill, but we are getting grizzly sightings now too. And in the center of your screen, just before Cindy turns the slide there, what you're looking at is, looks like a kit actually. It's pretty small, but that is an Arctic fox in its summer coloration. So the Arctic fox will turn kind of a brownish gray. So it's a very mottled color and very camouflage with its surroundings. But we have Arctic fox and red fox living virtually side by side here in Churchill. And actually, on our day that we go out on the rover, you'll have a chance to see. We'll point it out to you, a fox den that's out there as well in the wildlife management area. Thanks, Cindy. So much to see. As I say, it's hard to not talk for hours about Churchill. I'm trying to be considerate of your time here this evening, everyone. This slide here, we're just looking at some of the buildings around town. For example, on the left-hand corner, left-hand side of your screen, rather, one of our two halls in Churchill. It's called Caribou Hall. We also have a larger hall called Métis Hall, but we have 2 grocery stores. We have a beautiful school. We have a beautiful hospital in our town center complex, 7 hotels, several bed and breakfasts, several gift shops, 3 churches, 5 restaurants. Last summer, we got our very first food truck here as well. So we might be a town of only about 800 people, but there's a lot going on here, and of course, tourism is a huge part of the economy. So, kind of goes to show you, with a town of around 800 people, but it has 7 hotels plus several bed and breakfasts as well. In this part of the north, totem poles aren't a really big thing, the way they are in Alaska, for example, or Haida Gwaii, if you travel to those destinations. But there is a totem pole in front of Caribou Hall with a thunderbird on top. There's a seal, an Inuit boy, an Aboriginal youth as well. And at the bottom, the polar bear. Many years ago, a guide I trained under my very first year working here back in the fall of '99 said something to me I thought was quite insightful. He said to me, having the polar bear on the bottom of the totem pole was like saying that everything rests on the shoulders of the polar bear in Churchill. And that's a pretty accurate statement. In a sense, it does. Our way of life here in Churchill, even the local economy as well. I guess we really do rest on the shoulders of the polar bear here. Beautiful scenery there in the bottom of the screen. And then in the center at the top, a nice look at our train station in Churchill, where you will be arriving and departing from. It is a beautiful heritage building that opened back in 1929 and fully restored in the early 2000s. And it's also the home of Parks Canada Interpretive Center. We actually have 1 museum plus 2 interpretive centers in town, and Parks Canada is housed in the train station. And then a couple other, pretty log buildings in town on the right-hand side of the screen, including the Lazy Bear, which is one of the restaurants, one of our 5 restaurants, and then Wapusk General Store at the bottom on the right-hand side. They operate dog sledding tours, and also it's a nice little gift shop, one of the several gift shops. By the way, that word Wapusk, Wapusk, is the Cree word for white bear or polar bear. A little more than half of Churchill's population are Indigenous folk who live here. Lots of Cree people who live here, lots of Dene as well. Not a lot of Inuit, but there are some Inuit people in Churchill. Certainly, a little less than half of the local population are Caucasian. A lot of Métis. There's a very, very strong Métis presence in Churchill as well. And I know we're getting pretty close to the end of the slides here, but Leanne, our general manager from Westworld, she was here with her husband and her kids a few years ago. There's a couple of nice slides there from Leanne's visit to Churchill with her feet in the Hudson Bay, and then with the big Inukshuk statue. That's on our public beach, just right on the edge of town. And we'll stop there with the tour buses, but it's also a spot that you definitely can walk to from the hotel, easily less than a 10-minute walk from the front door of the hotel where you'll be staying. The polar bear crossing sign, you'll see a few of those around town. You'll definitely have opportunity to take a picture of the polar bear crossing sign. And then in the bottom of the screen, everyone, just a couple slides looking out to the Hudson Bay as well, too. You might be able to notice, I was thinking earlier, Cindy, that's quite a good slide, of the tidal flats. You can see that in the lower picture on the bottom of the screen. We have a very significant tidal range in Churchill. The tides actually average between 12 to 14 feet between low tide and high tide, and can be a little bit bigger than that as well. So at low tide, the tidal flats are quite significant here. So not the highest tides in the world, but certainly they are significant nonetheless. Thanks, Cindy. And moving on to our next slide, we'll have a look at the murals of Churchill. So much to tell you about that you're going to learn about during your visit. But we do have a lot of murals around town. And this slide here is showing you a handful of them. We have now, I would say we're probably closing in on somewhere around 30 murals, close to 30 murals around the town site. At the very beginning of our presentation, there was a photo of the Welcome to Churchill mural on the side of Home Hardware. That one's been there for a while, painted by a lovely local artist. But in 2017, we started getting a lot more murals. In fact, in June of 2017, there were 19 murals painted over a 10-day project. The project was called Seawalls, and a lovely lady, well known in the arts community from Winnipeg, she coordinated and curated the mural festival and had 18 different artists. Some were Canadian, at least a couple were from Winnipeg. One was a local Churchillian, and a couple from the US, and a handful of them were international artists and muralists that came into Churchill, painted these 19 murals. And then from time to time, a new mural pops up. As recently as last summer, actually, that very lady, Cal Barteski, who coordinated the mural project, came back and painted a beautiful snowy owl mural as well. But these are just a handful that you're seeing here. Some of the murals are outside of town, and some of the murals are in town. So the one in the lower right-hand corner of the screen is right across the street from my house. I can pretty well see that through the window if it wasn't dark out right now. But the murals really spruced up the town. Not only that, one thing you'll notice on your trip to Churchill is old buildings sitting around the landscape. Some of them are remnants from our military presence in Churchill when we had that large military base here, a few buildings that were never taken down. Some are remnants of the research rocket range that was here, like the building in the center at the top of the screen with the belugas on it, or others like the right-hand side of the screen. That old building has been sitting empty for many years, but at one time it was a staffing accommodation for the grain port, and at one time even housed a local radio station. And it's a fun fact we sometimes share as guides here in Churchill, at least we do when we have Canadians on our tour buses, is that a well-known Canadian broadcaster got his start here in Churchill, and that was Peter Mansbridge. So he got his start working at the local radio station, right there in that particular building, after he'd worked at the airport, and someone discovered his baritone voice. So yeah, one of the many fun facts about Churchill, of which there are many more. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Coral. That was just so fun and engaging. And honestly, I almost forgot to click the slides. I was so intrigued and listening intently to what you were sharing with everybody that I almost forgot to move the slides forward. But thank you so much for your information, your infinite amount of information and love of Churchill. And thank you so much for sharing it with us again this evening. I do really want to get to Churchill one day. It is definitely a bucket list destination for me, I know, and many. So, yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, it really is. It's funny to think that it's right here in the province of Manitoba. We have all those things, and it is quite a world-renowned destination. This is a place that people come to from all over the world, and it's right here in northern Manitoba, which is pretty incredible. But thank you very much, Cindy. It's impossible for me to not be enthusiastic about Churchill. I love this town more than I can even say in words. So I hope some of you listening here this evening will be on our August tour to Churchill. So thank you.
Yes, and at this time, please, if anybody has any questions that Coral may have possibly left unanswered, we'd love to hear them. And let's see, we do have one here right now. This is a great question. Coral can answer this, I'm sure. Well, weather is always iffy, but what will the weather be like, or what could we expect for weather in August, and what should a person pack?
That is an extremely good question. You're absolutely right. As for what the weather could be like, I'll address that part first of all. I am honestly finding, and I've been here for many years. I am finding though the summers do seem to be getting a bit warmer than they used to. Yeah, we do tend to hit some temperatures in the summer where we are, into the 20s Celsius. I've seen 25, probably 27 Celsius in Churchill, but we don't get too many days like that. We just get a handful. But the days where I was wearing a toque and gloves through the whole month of August, I haven't done that for quite a while. So I would say expect everyone, if you're coming to Churchill in August, maybe mid to high teens, or maybe even possibly low 20s to even mid 20s, possibly. But somewhere between 15 Celsius and 22 Celsius, probably somewhere in that general frame of reference. As far as what to pack, that's a really good question, and what to bring for clothes on your trip. Don't forget your insect repellent, although I can tell you one of the pluses of coming to Churchill in August is that usually the bugs or the insects aren't as bad here in August as they are in July. They're usually a lot worse in July, but nonetheless, don't forget your bug spray. Don't forget your sunglasses and a good hat as well too. And very, very casual running shoes, Skechers, anything like that. Hiking boots if you like, but even just a good pair of running shoes will serve you well. Some sports sandals are fine. Just casual pants, jeans are totally fine. Most importantly, though, it's all about layers in Churchill. So even in August, for sure, bring a pair of even thin gloves when you're out on the boat and the water. You might be happy to have that thin pair of gloves. And I would say, most importantly, bring yourself a good fleece, a good fuzzy warm fleece, or a good fuzzy hoodie that you have, but a nice fleece. And most importantly of all, a good wind repellent layer, wind and rain repellent. That's key. And if you can layer up those things, you'll be just fine.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for that, Coral. And I'm assuming the winds can be up in August, or are they fairly mild?
The wind, yeah, we live with wind in Churchill. On days when there's no wind, we kind of look around and go, what's happening? Why is there no wind today? So wind is part of our life here. We always say in the summertime though that the wind is our friend because it keeps the bugs away. So a little bit of wind is first of all pretty common, and also it's good. And so we don't want winds too high because that can affect our whale watching tour, but that doesn't happen that often. So I'm not too worried about that we would have winds that high that would affect the whale watching.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Coral. You're so informative. I just love listening to you chat about your tours. And like you said, you make me want to go to every single one. That's for sure. So
Thank you.
it looks at this point, I don't notice any further questions, but if that's the case, I just want to make sure and let everybody know that if they want more information on our tour to Churchill or any of our tours, please visit us on our website at westworldtours.com, or you can send us an email at inquiries@westworldtours.com, or you can contact your local travel agent as well. They're more than happy to answer any questions about our tours. We will be sending out some information to everybody that did register for the presentation. And we have a library on our website of all of our previous presentations if you want to check those out or you happen to miss any. And again, we do look forward to you joining us next week with Coral as we adventure our way through Africa, another bucket list destination. So thank you
I'm so
again.
excited about joining you for the Africa show next week, Cindy. As some of you probably know, listening right now, Westworld did our very first trip to Africa just last year, and we're looking very much forward to our return. And I had the privilege of guiding that tour last year. It was every bit as spectacular as I thought it would be. It was everything and more that you would imagine your trip to Africa being. And I am very, very excited about sharing that with you next week. Thank you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely. I'm excited for next week as well. We did have another question here from Cindy. Cindy is asking, when would you see lots of polar bears? And winter? If so, What other things are there to see at that time? I suppose she's asking about what else is there to see and do in Churchill in the wintertime when all of the polar bears are migrating.
Right. That is a really interesting question, actually. So January, February, and March is actually really the quietest time of the year here in Churchill. This is the only time of the year where I'm actually, as a local, feeling comfortable to go for a walk outside of town along the coast. The rest of the year is too dangerous to do that. But right now, the polar bears are actually out in the sea ice of the Hudson Bay hunting. So because of that, it means there's not bears around town. One thing you'll learn more about if you come to Churchill is mums and cubs, and why mums and cubs are actually starting to move through the Churchill area more so in March as they're coming out of their dens. But wintertime is actually the quietest time for us with polar bears because the bears are actually out hunting right now. The busiest time of the year is when the polar bears come completely out of their state called walking hibernation in the summer. So as I was saying, in August, the bears are becoming more active as they're coming out of this carnivore lethargy, as we also call it, or walking hibernation, and starting to move around more. And then generally the bears are kind of at their peak staging at the end of October, or sometimes even the first week in November, when the bears are basically just staging, waiting to get back onto the ice. And that's the time when they're migrating, sometimes migrating right through town, although we try to make sure that that doesn't happen. But yeah, August is really, or can be at least, the trifecta. The beluga whales, quite often, even for our Westworld group's polar bears. And not only that, the skies are getting darker in August, which means you also have a very good chance of seeing the aurora borealis. And that's why tourism is happening right now in Churchill, not for polar bears and of course not for beluga whales. We have several visitors in town, lots of tour groups here right now, mostly from the US, that are here right now for the purpose of seeing the Northern Lights. And that's why January, February, and March is a busy time of the year in Churchill.
Thanks, Coral. And yes, I think, August is potential of being a trifecta for sure. The timing is perfect. Yeah. So again, it was a great question, Cindy. Thank you so much for asking that. And again, Coral, I will say thank you once more. And I look forward to seeing you next week as we roam through Africa.
I do as well. Thank you. Thanks for being with us tonight, everyone.
Yes, everyone, have a good evening and enjoy the rest of it. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.